My name is Scott Myers, and I am the program manager for Venture for ClimateTech. We're a small but mighty team, so we all wear lots of hats. But my main prerogative is focusing on our curriculum and the day-to-day experience for our founders, and kind of being the glue between all of our outside speakers, our internal team, and our ecosystem with our founders throughout the program. Um, we're joined here by two panelists, which I will formally introduce after I go through a few slides. Just general housekeeping items. If you haven't already, please throw in the chat where you're calling in from. But if you have any questions, we have a Q&A function here on the webinar. It's best to throw any questions you want answered by myself, any of the V4C program team, or our alumnus who are speaking today. It's best to throw in the Q&A just because it's easy for questions to get lost in the comments section. Sometimes my colleagues will answer some questions just through the Q&A function, but for the most part, for this experience, we'll likely save the Q&A for the end, as we'll earmark the last portion of this webinar to talk about or to answer any questions. So again, to reiterate, sorry if I sound like a broken record, but throw in where you're calling from in the chat, and any Q&A or any questions, use the Q&A section within the webinar. So just quickly, a little bit about Venture for Climate Tech. We're a nonprofit accelerator funded by the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority, NYSERDA. We're administered by a nonprofit called NextCore based in Rochester, New York. We're one of several programs underneath the NextCore portfolio. We've been around, our first cohort was back in 2020. And so we're moving into our sixth cohort. It's a 6-month virtual program. We're accepting 10 pre-seed and seed stage startups per cohort, and each startup is receiving up to $50,000 in non-dilutive funding. Just a little brag slide for V4C. We've gone through 5 cohorts and worked with 78 startups. Through the duration of the program and post-program, our team sizes have gone up 2x. Our teams have received $172 million of funding, 95 million of that raised in private capital. And as you see here, Breakthrough Energy, STTR, Activate, some of the programs that are within our ecosystem, but also that our alumni have joined and partnered with post V4C or pre V4C. We have an amazing team here, led by our managing director, Jack Barron, and our directors, Devin Sandin and Jenny Leong. Daniel Criozer has come on full time for us as our director of investment. And we have our marketing and community relations manager, Chris Carpenter, and our EIR, Sharon Sanjit Singh. We're backed by a pretty amazing board. I won't go into the individuals here, but as you can see, it spans the climate tech ecosystem, mixing of program leads and managing directors of amazing programs and individuals within venture capital firms and potential corporate partners. We're really proud of the board that we've built, and they remain an integral part of how we run V4C. We have 3 key sectors within New York State that we focus on. The first being buildings, just 30% of New York State emissions, transportation, which is 28% of the emissions, grid and energy, which is 13%, and industry, which is 9%. Just wanted to go through some program highlights here. We are a 6-month virtual high-touch accelerator split into 3 phases. Each team can get up to $50,000 in non-dilutive funding throughout the program. We recruit globally with a New York State lens. We work with pre-seed or seed stage companies. Those are ideal with a TRL sweet spot between 2 and 7. Co-founder is not required, but founders must have at least an LLC to receive the grant checks. Not get into the program, but to receive the grant checks. That is something you should be striving towards. And it is a part-time commitment between 7 and 12 hours per week throughout the program. Just wanted to give a little snapshot of the timeline, the accelerator program at a glance. So right now we're in our recruiting stage, as you see here. We recruit uh, through 9 weeks here with our boot camp and our down selection starting around April 6th, with the program start on May 11th. With really our program climax would be during New York City Climate Week, which is the first day of the Monday of New York City Climate Week, which this year is on September 21st. To just want to go over the timeline a little bit here. So applications did open on the 6th, and we are closing applications on the 20th. We are conducting early applicant interviews between February 11th and March 24th. Our boot camp selection notification will come out on the 27th, with our boot camp happening on between April 6th and April 9th. The screening committee is on April 10th, notification is on the 10th, with the actual screening committees between the 14th and the 15th of April. And then you will know if you get into the program on April 20th. And then again, program starts on May 11th. And just a quick must-haves for our applicants. You have to have a technology that has a potential for substantial reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, a team that is coachable, driven, and self-aware, and have a market and impact in New York State and commitment to supporting and or benefiting New York State communities. Before I go into introducing our two alumni applicants for our Q&A section, I did just want to note that this was a brief overview of our program. We had a much more in-depth webinar about 2 weeks ago, I believe, which are available on our application portal. My colleague Chris Carpenter will throw that link in the chat now, and we'll also follow up after this with elongated deck that has more information about our program that you can go ahead and reference. And then on the portal that Chris is putting in the chat, you can also even look at the recording from our initial webinar, which goes into more depth. Thank you for bearing with me there. Wanted to get through those slides. It's important to know that information. But I want to now jump on into the fun part, I would say, which is our alumni panel. I'm happy to introduce our first of two speakers here joining us. Her name is Julia Curley, and she is the founder and CEO of EsterCycle. EsterCycle is developing a low energy process for a circular recycling of mixed petroleum and bio-based plastics. Our second speaker is Chris Thomas. He is the founder and CEO of Return, where they develop platform biotechnologies that upcycle abundant agro-industrial plant waste into a new set of biomaterials, turnable for sustainable packaging and beyond. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see our two speakers. Chris, Julia, thanks so much for being here.
Very happy to be here.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we like to think our program is pretty good, but we thought it'd be better for you all to hear it directly from our alumni. But before we get into the nitty-gritty and ask you questions about our program, I wanted to first give you both a chance to kind of go in more depth about your company and your motivation behind starting your company. So we're going to go ahead and start with Julia, followed by Chris.
Sure. Awesome. Thanks for having me. So, as Scott mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of EsterCycle. So, I'm a chemist by training. I got my PhD and then started a postdoctoral position at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado. And I was really looking to do research that could have a real world impact. And while I was there, I was working on developing improved technologies to recycle today's plastics. And one of those technologies I ended up spinning out into EsterCycle. We'd kind of gotten to the end of where the technology could go in the lab, and I really thought it could have a real world impact and go somewhere in the world. And so decided to take the leap and start EsterCycle about a year and a half ago now.
Thanks. And Chris?
Cool. I have somewhat of a opposite beginning where I saw the market need. I just finished my PhD, also a technical founder. In my PhD, I posited, hey, someone should develop a technology like this. Someone should make a technology using biotechnology that produces better bioplastics, ones that are cheaper and ones that perform better. And then I went out and got funding based on that proposal and used that as the basis of the company. And I've been doing this for 4-ish years now. Started basically 2022, just myself, and now as of today, I have a team of like 17,
Wow.
which is also a big difference from when I started V4C in 2024.
Yeah, Chris, so you said 4 years, but what is it actually, how many years does it actually feel like? 'Cause I feel like startup years are like dog years or cat years.
It is kind of funny. Like it will simultaneously feel like it's been forever and no time at all has passed. Like it blows my mind that it's been 2 years since I first applied to V4C because it
Yeah.
really feels like yesterday that I was just pitching at the event in New Lab in New York at the end of it.
Yep. Time isn't real when you're a startup founder.
That's right.
All right. We're gonna just kind of hopscotch through who starts. So Chris, this question is gonna go to you first, and then we'll ask Julie after. But at what stage would you describe your company when you first applied for the program?
In terms of technology development, we were still pretty early. So I think on the lower threshold of that TRL 2 to 7 mark, we had some good proof of concept. We had the patents for the core technology, but still had a lot of development to do with regard to bringing it to market, which, I think good customer discovery would have been helpful. So we had that. We had done an NSF core program, for the regional through teams. Um, at the time, I was the only full-time employee of the company. And then I had my co-founders who were part-time. And by the end of the program, I think I had my full-time co-founders and one employee.
Mhm.
Um, and we were thinking about venture capital, I guess maybe in a naive sense, very early, like when we started the program. But we did, with the help of the program, get our materials together and just shortly after it ended, got our first investment commitment.
Wow. Thanks so much, Chris. And Julia, for you, again, the question is, what stage would you describe your company when you applied to the program?
Yeah, kind of similar to Chris. I was the only full-time employee of EsterCycle. I was sole founder, and working full-time on my own with no other even part-time support. So it was very early. I had just formed the LLC for EsterCycle in August of 2024, and so starting in V4C less than a year later. And yeah, I was definitely I felt like my technology development was maybe little bit further along than Chris described. I had the opportunity to do about 2 years of R&D at NREL before taking the plunge to start the company. But as far as business development and my growth as an entrepreneur, I was certainly very, very early and still figuring out what exactly being a startup. So yeah, needed a lot of guidance.
Great. Totally fair. Thanks so much for sharing that. So we'll go back to you for this one, Julia. Can you describe the problems your company was facing at the beginning of the program and why you decided to join Venture for Climate Tech?
Yeah, of course. I mean, pretty much what I just described in my last
Yeah.
answer. I was a technical sole founder, first time founder, just trying to figure out, I thought I had this really cool technology and now what? And so decided to apply for Venture for Climate Tech because I had heard from an alumnus how great a program it was and how great the opportunities that I could access through the program were. Not only like the direct kind of programming that Venture for Climate Tech offers, but also networking, connections, kind of fringe benefits that the program has. And so, yeah, really wanted to help myself develop as a startup founder and an entrepreneur and kind of take the next step for the company. So that's why I applied.
Thanks. And Chris?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So, I actually applied twice to the program. So, first time applied, did the boot camp in 2023, which was
Mhm.
helpful. I don't know if you want me to talk about that at all, or if you want to jump
Yeah.
to 2024 when I did the boot camp plus
Yeah,
the full
no, I
program.
mean, we can let it flow, man. So yeah, go ahead
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah.
So I did apply a couple times. First time was in 2023, and at that time it was very early stage. At that time I was fighting for a laboratory. I had funding, I had an idea, I had a market to take it to, and I just needed a place to do the work. Um, but was really helpful about even just the boot camp then, which is it's just a week, right? Or 2 weeks?
4 days.
4 days. That's crazy. It was super helpful. I think it forced us to make a lot of learnings in that time and changed how we were talking to customers, which at that point, I didn't even know who my customers were going to be. Or maybe I thought I knew who they were, and it was everybody. Turns out it's not everybody. It needs to be very specific. Um, and I think that gave us some good direction to develop through 2023 and then 2024 when we reapplied. At that point, we were talking to the right customers. We had much more specific idea, better technology development. But runway is real, and when you're what does Kristen, my co-founder, always say? We're building the plane while we're trying to get it off the runway. When you're trying to do both at the same time, you need to be very strategic about how you spend your resources. We know generally we needed money, right? And I think that was appealing about Venture for Climate Tech. It's like, hey, here's a little capital, and we're going to train you how to get more capital. Um, but I think we were looking for how do we run a company? How do we attract the right talent? How do we know we're on the right path? Um, so I think there was just a lot of core startup stuff that, looking back, were the challenges we need to overcome then. Like, how do we be a founder, found set of founders? How do we run a company? At the time I was thinking like, how do I get $1 million? uh, and I'll leave it at that because like that of course never changed. We always knew, hey, we're using a biotechnology to answer materials problem. Like we're gonna have to build something big. But there's a lot of complexity and nuance, the path you take and when and why you do that. And so I think that helped set us on that path and to start asking the right questions to get on that track.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Chris. And just reference, so Chris was talking about our boot camp, and Return isn't the only startup that applied originally, didn't get in, and then ended up getting in at a later cohort. But what we do, and I referenced it when I was sprinting through the slides in the beginning, and then you'll be able to reference and learn more about boot camp in this slide deck that we're going to be sending after this webinar. But our boot camp is, we call it a bit of a snapshot of what our program is going to look like. We kind of take little tidbits of what we address in further length during our curriculum. We crunch it down into a 4 day intensive, and it allows us to give a broader value because we can only accept so many teams into our cohort. And so it gives that broader value. And it sounded like it helped Chris shape at least the next year and then made him a stronger candidate when he applied again. So I have a huge list of questions here and a few it's going to overlap with some of your answers, but I still wanted to ask this one, and it might sound a bit redundant. But Chris, I'm going to go ahead and start with you again, and then Julia will be next. But if you can kind of narrow it down to just one or two things, what did you find most valuable from the Venture for Climate Tech program and why?
Oh, that's a really tough choice because it's definitely like five or six things I want to talk about. But for the sake of it being a webinar, and I think I really want to hear what Julia has to say on this too. So I'll just say what's top of my mind. One is it changed how I pitch. Whenever I'm preparing my materials, whenever I'm writing out my pitch, I'm just always thinking about the training that came through then. How do I make it shorter? How do I make it more targeted towards the audience? More concise, more precise. And there's just kind of like a running dialogue in the back of my head whenever I prepare materials. And that's very helpful. Um, Brevity is great when you're pitching. And then the second is actually kind of like a very specific thing from 1 week session, and that was the OKR's KPIs week. Which at the time I'm like, hey, it's just me and Ryan. Like, why are we setting OKRs, KPIs? Like, honestly, at the time, I think I ranked it very low. I was like, I don't know why I'm dealing with this right now. Why are you guys forcing me to identify? Um, and I guess, yeah, here's the snapshot. OKRs, KPIs, objective key results, key performance indicators. It's basically how you in corporations measure progress. How do you set goals and measure your progress towards those goals? But now, fast forward a few years later, when I have a much larger team and I'm trying to figure out how to better manage them, I'm like, OKRs and KPIs, which I just spent the past month instituting with my team, and it's super, super helpful. And so I think there's some nuggets you'll get that persist as you continue on your journey.
Chris and Julia.
Yeah, glad Chris went first. You stole, well, I was going to also answer OKRs and KPIs.
No
Very
way.
similar experience.
No way.
Yeah, just similarly, I was kind of like, oh, I don't need those. I'm a team of one. I can keep track of my own progress, but hopefully you're not always going to be a team of one. And yeah, pitch practice was also so helpful. Shout out to Jenny for just being an amazing pitch coach. But to add some other things that I found really valuable, I was able to access, as I kind of mentioned earlier, some fringe benefits through Venture for Climate Tech, one of which was Columbia's Key Hire program. And so this was a program where I was able to bring someone onto my team part-time for a 3-month trial project. And it was funded. So the person I was bringing on, James, I wanted to see if he would be a good fit for like kind of a co-founder on my team. But the hardest thing about that when you're a startup is you often don't have cash to just throw away on, finding a good candidate and seeing if it's a good fit. But you also don't want to make that decision too quickly. And anyway, this was just kind of the ideal program to work with somebody, have them be able to get some compensation for that. There was some guidance as far as setting the bounds of what we wanted the project to be and what the goals were. And yeah, that's how I ended up finding my second employee for EsterCycle. So that was really just incredibly valuable and also perfectly timed for me and EsterCycle. And then a second thing I would say is just the general mentorship and networking available through V4C. Um, Access to some really great mentors in the program that were, within my industry or had like the specific business and entrepreneurial insights I was looking for, just really helping me grow as an entrepreneur through our weekly meetings and beyond. And also the V4C team itself having such a great set of expertise across their many disciplines has been, yeah, truly wonderful.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Julia. And I'm glad that you brought up the program that Columbia um, manages. So uh, one of our partners within our ecosystem is a NYSERDA funded program called CEN, the Climate Expertise Network. And they administer a handful of programs, one of them being the Key Hire. They also have EIR program where you can work on specific projects, and that you can sign up at either 20-hour or 40-hour contracts. And this is a program funded by NYSERDA, the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority, which is usually just earmarked for New York State-based climate startups. But being a part of our program gives you eligibility for those programs for a year-long runway while you're in the program. So it opens up access to that amazing resource. And they're such a great partner of ours. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to reference that. So thanks for bringing that up, Julia. And I'm so glad it worked out so well for you. Okay, so this one I'll go back to you, Julia. Oh yeah, Chris just dropped the link to CEN in the chat, so definitely check that out. So for this next question was there anything that surprised you about the program, about V4C that kind of took you off guard of whether good or bad or mid or however that made you feel? But I'd be curious to know if anything surprised you about the program.
Ooh, great question. I think one thing that surprised me in a good way was how much it challenged me. I had done a couple accelerators before. I'd been through programming. I'd been through some amount of kind of structured support for startups. But V4C really does a great job of being unique and very well tailored to the startups in the cohorts. And yeah, an example being the OKRs again, which we kind of brought up in the last question. I had never set these before, and as part of the program, you're expected to set your objectives and key results each week for your meetings with the V4C team, the kind of one-on-one check-ins. And this was a very new experience for me. That definitely was a bit of a learning curve to like really formalize how I'm structuring my time, how I'm measuring my progress each week. And it forced me to think differently in a way that I think was so helpful, again, for me as an individual and EsterCycle as a startup. And so, yeah, I think just kind of the challenge of being a sole founder and learning a lot in a short and efficient amount of time was yeah, surprising in a good way.
Great, thanks. And Chris, anything that surprised you about the program?
I would have to think on that a little bit more. I
That's
was
okay.
surprised because I hadn't done that many accelerator programs beforehand, like you had, Julia. So I think this was for me like an introduction to, what a strong accelerator program could be. Um, I'll say I think I was surprised at how much time I spent in the accelerator program, but I think it really made sense for me at that stage for my company. Um, and when I finally did meet up with everybody, I was a little bit surprised at like how much it felt like, oh, this was like my little family, and I wish I had seen them more. We finally were all together in person. Um, yeah, that's my answer.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's always surprising because you spend a hard like 4 months together, 4 or 5 months together, and then we finally get to all hang out in person. It's like, wait, we're like a modern version of pen pals, like a 2020 and on pen pals for 5 months, and then we finally all get to hang out in New York City, which is just an insane experience. A lot going on there, but thanks so much. And both of you kind of touched on this. And so maybe it's just reiterating, and we'll ask you first, Chris, what was the most challenging part of the program for you and why?
Ooh, for sure, leading up to the demo night in New York, that is where I learned the most about pitching. But I remember being in the lab very, very late, getting feedback from Jenny, getting feedback from Sharon, and I think it was challenging in part because they, in a good sense, as a good teacher, like ripped us apart. It's like,
With love, of course.
but like honestly, it's great. And it's nice to have that in a space with like, here's people who are doing this because they want you to be better and they do make you better. And then when it comes time to sit in front of investors, people who don't care about you, who want to rip you apart, I'm ready. So I would say that was the most challenging part of the program was literally that singular moment, like the week or two leading up to that, getting that pitch ready and then getting up on stage. Because I don't think I've had a similar type of pitch intensity as that was, that kind of stage, that environment, that number of investors all in the same room. Very cool. Would love to do it again.
Thanks, Chris. And Julia?
Yeah, definitely could echo that. That was an intense and yeah, an experience that changed me for sure. But I think to add something different, one thing that challenged me was something that Chris and also myself brought up in the last question. Being a solo founder and the only person at EsterCycle during Venture for ClimateTech, and so therefore being kind of responsible for attending all the programming and hitting all the milestones and doing all the deliverables on my own was certainly a challenge. It does take up, a good amount of time if you want to do it properly, as I think you should. And so yeah, that ended up being a challenge for me to kind of juggle along with all of the other business and technical development work I was doing. But yeah, certainly worthwhile and something that, again, I think I got a lot out of. So it was definitely worth the time.
Awesome. Okay, so I have a few questions here, which are less V for C oriented and just kind of where you both are at with your companies right now as the individuals listening, might be in your shoes a year from now, 2 years from now, or currently in your similar path. But we'll start with you, Julian. Can you just, and I think you referenced it a bit earlier on, and so did you, Chris, but if we can kind of double click on it, can you describe where your company is now and what goals you're working on next, like maybe in like a 6 month runway type idea?
Sure. Yeah. Hopefully going to be a really fast-paced 6 months. So yeah, started V4C last spring, summer, as a sole founder. And I've now brought on, I still have the same person that started in the key hire program during V4C as my fractional chief commercial officer. In the next 6 months, I'm actively fundraising right now. And so hoping to close EsterCycle's first dilutive funding round. Yeah, then bring on James full time to join the team, plus two engineers. So growing from a team of one and a half to four, and switching from using the lab facilities at the national lab, which we still have access to through another accelerator that I'm in, and kind of outgrowing that facility and starting our own independent pre-pilot facility in Colorado. So yeah, hopefully some big moves coming up.
Awesome. And Chris, the same question. Can you describe where your company is now and what goals you're working on next?
Sure. Right now we have 7 employees, 10 interns, and I expect to be making another scientific senior hire within the next quarter, which will be associated with closing my pre-seed raise. So, gotten a good month, like about half of that closed, committed so far, and $1 million, and a good line to get the rest of that soon. And that is going to be used to supplement and support work I'm doing with scale up. So I just contracted with the IBRL or IFAB outside of Illinois, which is like the biomanufacturing place in North America. We scouted every single place in North America. And it's perfect because they're also aligned with our customers. So we're going to start there, going up to kilogram and then multi-kilogram and then ton scale. And at the same time, I'm also potentially building out like a separate research node in California, in Berkeley area, in association with the USDA lab and plug and play, and maybe beam circular generator there. And also, I'm part of Activate. Activate also has a node in the Berkeley area. And all this is really, if you're investors, I would talk about our milestones are scaling up, delivering larger quantities to customers so that I can get offtake agreements, which will be used as a basis for the seed round, which I'm starting at the end of the year to raise another $4 to $5 million and then go to multi-ton scale.
Great. So I have a question that's a bit more specific for you, Chris, especially just, seven full-time, 10 interns is how did you find and develop your team? It's a pretty large team. Like, how did you find it? How did you develop? Um, and, juggling all that, 10 interns is a lot because, interns are amazing, but sometimes, they can you want them to get a lot out of that internship as well. So it comes with their own work. So yeah, how did you find and develop the team that you're working with now?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I do not have a traditional good answer for that. I will tell you what really happened, and I am happy with it. My whole focus in my company is culture. I'm trying to make sure that this is a really cool, fun place to work because, I mean, let's be real, we're all in startup world. Odds are most of us aren't gonna make it, whatever make it means, whatever we perceive our access to be with the company. And so it is an incredibly stressful, difficult thing to do. We're all gonna be underpaid while we do it. Might as well ensure that we're working at a place that aligns with everybody's values while we're here, right? And I really, really strive to do that with our company. As far as like our full-time hires, like, yes, I'm the founder and CEO, and I am a, white cis male, but, my company is like 30% men and the rest is women because I was raised my mom's a huge feminist and I believe in that too. And I try to make this like a badass feminist workplace. Like we have a 4 month, maternity leave policy that Kristen's on right now and a lot of other things like that. Um, and at the same time, because it's a potentially short-term thing, right? Like I think we're in a pretty good spot. But then again,
Hmm.
could be 5 years, could be 3 years, but it definitely has an endpoint. I'm really focused on professional development with the team, whether it's a part-time employee, full-time employee, or an intern, and that they're at least going to walk away with skills and experience that will set them up to do well in whatever they're going to do next. Um, and I think that culture has really helped attract people. This is my long way of getting at like I have all these values, and for some reason, I just keep I we don't do outreach or anything. You just keep finding people, and they happen to be the perfect fit. Like I told you about that full-time hire. That's actually someone else who works for a different company that I'm adjacent to, who's like, hey, let me know when you're hiring. I would love to bring my 40 years of experience into what you do. I see that you guys are very professional. I see you have a good culture. Um,
Mhm.
I'm willing to take a pay cut to come work with you. And so I think, yeah, I think that's really how I've managed
Yeah.
to do
If you build it, they will come. Um,
it.
but for real though, it's when we think of all the things that CEOs and founders are juggling, and you think of growing your team, it can be like make sure the job description's out, make sure you're networking with the right people, and culture's just is high up there and with anything else there. And you can if you don't focus on building your culture, you can make these amazing early hires and that can fall flat if you don't have the right culture in place. And Julia, just being at a different part, at least with company size, you referenced it before, but can you maybe briefly talk about your experience with the Key Hire program and how you've benefited from that, and maybe how you see yourself growing and building your team as you move forward?
Definitely. Yeah. I'd love to grow my team in a similar way to what Chris described. Sounds awesome, especially, 4 month maternity leave. Pretty sick. But yeah, so the Key Hire program, I think Scott, actually, you were the one who first in my like weekly check-in, I was mentioning wanting to, do kind of a trial project with this guy I'd been speaking to for a while about joining the company. And you were like, oh, we have a way to get you some funding for that. And introduced me to the CEN team. And so that was, yeah, it was a really easy and relatively quick and painless process as far as, I was qualified even though I'm not located in New York because of being in Venture for Climate Tech. And one thing that I didn't get to utilize was the fact that, I kind of brought in my own candidate that I said, hey, I'd love to see how James and I are as a fit. But the program has like a pool of entrepreneurs that are interested in finding their next startup opportunity that you could potentially be matched with depending on what you're looking for in your hire. And so if you kind of go in knowing, well, I need someone to help me with business development, but I don't have anyone in mind, like that is something that the program can help with. Um, and it was helpful. We went through some lists again of like what I'm looking for, what my skill sets are versus what I'm trying to find in my hire, some personality assessments that are always fun and a little daunting to look at. And then yeah, it's sort of outlined a project in collaboration with the Key Hire program team. And then we were off, and it was kind of an ideal amount of oversight in the program, just kind of monthly check-ins, both with myself and James, who I was, doing the project with on how things were going and making sure everything was running smoothly. But yeah, that was really it. It was great. And then yeah, moving forward, I'd love to again just kind of have my company culture and ethos and everything attract the right people. Because yeah, just echoing everything Chris said, the startup probably won't be around forever, so we might as well have a good time and do it properly while we're here.
Amazing. So I have a few more questions here, and this one can really be open-ended and can go on forever because everyone's always think fundraising. It came up a bunch already when it comes to fundraising, but if you don't mind, Julie, I'll start with you. And if you could go back to where you were at right before the program, and you could give yourself some advice around fundraising or what to expect, your best practices, something of that sort, reality check, whatever that might be. What would you tell yourself?
Ooh, oh boy. I guess I would say timing is key with fundraising, I think, and not to feel rushed into it, and also don't put it off forever. So finding a balance there. I was lucky enough to have support both through Venture for Climate Tech and the other accelerator that I'm in called Westgate, which is a Department of Energy funded program. So I was kind of sitting pretty with myself covered, being able to use the labs at NREL for a while, just kind of treading water, which is great to have that runway. But then, I couldn't really grow using that funding because it was just for me. And so I think, kind of timing it properly, which I think I've mostly managed to do, with when EsterCycle is ready to take that next step and grow, but still has some time to make sure it works out properly, has been, yeah, would be valuable advice to give myself and not be too worried about, running out of money or putting it off too long.
Yeah. All right. Chris, how about yourself? What would you, if you go back to pre V for C program, what would you tell yourself regarding fundraising?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I I would go back and remind myself because I think often I put myself in situations where I'm like, maybe there's someone here that could help me with fundraising, and then I leave and I'm like, ah, nothing came of it. Like, did I waste my time or not? That it's not a waste of time. Like, it is just multiple shots on goal, and like sometimes you could be in the most random place where you think there's definitely no funding related to this, and then you meet the right person, and they're an angel investor in your company, um, which has happened to me. Uh, and so I think it is about, being there and like participating really, really well with whatever you do. Um, so I'm gonna like hijack this question also get on a whole and be like, if you do participate in accelerator, it's always so important. Actually, I think Julie already mentioned this, to like to be there fully. Also, I have no idea how you did this alone at the same time. Like that's amazing. I would have been lost if I didn't have someone else I could split it 50-50 with. That's super impressive.
Yeah. It's because she's awesome. Um, but but yeah, I really appreciate both yours candor on that. It's really it's going to be different for everyone. It's going to be longer than you think. And a lot of the times, what our past managing director used to say as an advice is, a lot of times when you're asking for funding, you're going to get advice, and when you're asking for advice, sometimes you'll get some funding. And it's really how it shakes out. All right, so I have one more question, and then we have one question in the Q&A that I'm gonna open up to both of you, and I would encourage any of the participants listening to please put some questions in the Q&A section, whether it's for me or two amazing alumni. But a last question I have for both of you is, what advice would you give someone considering applying to V4C? I'll start with you first, Chris.
I would seriously take a look at the stage of your company, and think about if it's the right fit considering your stage of your company. Like for me right now, like scaling up, I have this many employees. I don't think we'd be the right stage anymore. For us at that time, that was perfect, in terms of the learnings we were getting. Uh, and I think there may be a tendency as CEOs, as founders, to be totally fixated on like a potential dollar amount that's associated with these types of things. But there's usually a lot more that comes along with that dollar amount, in value. And I did see that with V4C. And so I think look heavily into the programming. I hope you took good notes during the webinar, maybe follow up with Scott and Chris and Devin with questions because they're great at answering them. Um, and consider, are you also going to get the learning that makes sense for your company at that time? Um, it was perfect for me at my learning point, but if I was going to go back again right now, it's like I just learned all those things. And often when I do look at new accelerators and things, I'm like, well, I kind of already learned that in V4C and I'm in Activate. So also in Activate, like I wouldn't do that. So and when you do, I suspect it's part of your process for selecting candidates, but I'm not entirely sure. Although I'm finding it more and more that it's not just your technology, but it's who they're inviting in. Because I enjoyed every single founder I met in Activate, or sorry, not Activate, in V4C, Activate as well. We'll talk about that another time. I'm in Venture for ClimateTech, so I think think about who you are and who you're bringing. What kind of experience you're going to bring to the table beyond just your technology.
Thanks, Chris. Julia?
Yeah, again, definitely want to echo what Chris said. Timing is everything, and each program is kind of meant for, a specific stage of company. I would also encourage anybody to talk to someone who's been through the program. I think I mentioned in one of my early answers that the reason I decided to apply for V4C was that I spoke with somebody who had gone through in the previous cohort and really enjoyed the experience and was able to ask a lot of my questions to him about, what he got out of the program and all the nitty-gritty things. And so, yeah, I definitely encourage you to look at the alumni companies of V4C, see if you know anybody. Feel free to reach out to myself if you have questions that you want to ask, offline. And yeah, that can be the best way to really learn a program and whether or not it could be the right fit for you.
All right. Thank you both so much. We have one question in the Q&A section from Jeremy. And I think it's a good question for both is what sets V4C aside from other accelerators? Whether accelerators you've been through or what you've heard or anything of that sort. And for this one, I will let either one of you go first. So it's kind of a volunteer who goes first situation.
I can do that. Chris looks pensive. I think again, this is probably going to be an amalgam of things I've already said, but it's not only the programming, which, as I also said, is kind of unique and tailored for this in a way that I think is really valuable, but it's also all of the things on the side. So we've spoken a lot about the Key Hire program, but also access to entrepreneurs and residents, also through Columbia's program was a great way to get some free help from a multi-time entrepreneur and startup founder. I was able to get help on financial modeling, which is expensive and complicated and something that I didn't want to have to teach myself, to be honest. And, access to mentors. I'm currently getting assistance with Daniel on my fundraising round, which has been really valuable. So it's kind of all these things on the side that, again, as Chris mentioned, aren't wrapped up in what you might see as like the cash amount that V4C offers, but are, like really fully supported parts of the program that make it really special. And I certainly haven't seen elsewhere.
Awesome. All right, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. I think that is reflective on how amazing you both have been in answering the questions that I've asked. So we'll just wait maybe another 30 seconds to see if anyone else wants to drop any questions in the Q&A. And in that time, I'll say we'll be sending an elongated version of the deck I went through, which will have some more information on the program, boot camp, timeline, funding, all that fun stuff. We'll also uh, have some contact information for Julia and Chris on there. Um, and in the meantime, our Chris Carpenter is putting some posts in you're our Chris as well, Chris. But Chris Carpenter is putting some links in the chat section on how to find more information about our program, how to access the past recording of webinars. We will be following up again with emails. I don't see any more Q&A, so I will take that as a sign to end 9 minutes early. Julia, Chris, thank you so much for being here. You guys are rock stars, and I appreciate your continued support for V4C and all the amazing work you're doing in the space.
Always a pleasure.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it, and thank you everyone who tuned in. Hope everyone has a great week, and if you're in the Northeast, stay warm. All right, see you, everyone.